Hello, my name is Mavil Aghadjanian. I am the Executive Director at the Montrose Verdugo City Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us today. This is the first of our Small Town Big Dreams series. Give me just 1 second. There we go. And thank you for joining us today. Today we have Keith Hobbs, the CEO of USC Verdugo Hills Hospital. If you are a local, you are certainly familiar with the hospital, and that's why I wanted to bring him on today. I thought during this pandemic, we've had a lot of downtime, and I know I've used this time to get more familiar with my local businesses and how to support them. And so I thought, why not bring someone in who's a prominent figure in our community and see what they've been up to. And I had heard a little bit about his story before. I know he grew up locally, and I was just curious, how did someone who grew up in Montrose become the CEO of the local hospital? So we're just going to get to know him today. And I want to preface that we are in the studio. We are following health procedures, including social distancing with COVID-19. But I do think we will take our masks off. We are more than 6 feet apart. I would say we actually measured it. It was 10 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and take my mask off so that we can, looks a little better on camera. And let's begin. And just a thank you to our producers as well, Stamina Wellness, for giving us this amazing production rather than the remote from home, filming from home. This just looks so much better, so thank you to them as well. So hello, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
The last time I saw you was at the 9/11 motorcade.
Yeah, it was a great event.
Yes, it was. And I'm glad that we were able to still do it despite everything going on right now.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know you, including myself, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you're familiar with Montrose? Let's start with who you are and what you do.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I do also want to thank Stamina Wellness and you, Mavil, for having me here this afternoon. For those of you in the live chat that don't know me, I grew up in this community. I've been spending the last 5 years as the CEO for USC Verdugo Hills Hospital. And prior to that, I had spent 23 years at Children's Hospital Los Angeles.
That's amazing. Wow. I think I saw that on your LinkedIn, and I was like, I want to ask about that. So we'll get into that a little bit later.
Sure.
And can you just tell us a little bit about, you said you grew up here. Was it Montrose specifically? Was it the surrounding area?
Mm-hmm.
It was
So there's so many memories I have in this local community. So I physically grew up in Oakmont Woods. And if you think of where Oakmont Woods is and you think about the city of Glendale, a small sliver of Glendale runs all the way up through Montrose and La Crescenta. And so if I crossed over the street, I would be in Montrose and La Crescenta. And so I went to Fremont Elementary School. And
right
each day after school, I would go to an after school home where I would do my studying, hang out with other folks since both of my parents worked. That happened to be on Rosemary Street, which is just below the Montrose Shopping Center area. And so many times in the afternoon, my friends and I would find ourselves walking through Honolulu and Montrose growing up.
Oh, that's so interesting. So does that mean you also went to Rosemont and CV?
Yes, I'm Fremont Elementary, Rosemont Junior High, and Crescenta Valley High School graduate. So born and raised through the community. And my wife grew up in the La Cañada area. I'd like to say that I married up, and she went to La Cañada Elementary School and La Cañada High School. And so we really have the community covered as far as really being embedded growing up here in the local area.
Right. Well, that's amazing. I love that. And did you know her back then, or did you just, how did that, I mean, we're going off, I have a list of questions I want to ask you. Now we're already going off a little bit, but that's so interesting. Did you meet here, or?
Yeah, my wife and family, but particularly my wife, is very special to me. We met here in the local community, like high school sweethearts. We met at our local church and got to know each other and then started dating, and here we are.
That's amazing. That's a long time. What's
Yeah.
the secret to your marriage?
So, well, we've been married 30 years.
Yeah.
This couple weeks ago in October, we were actually supposed to be in Italy right now with her, celebrating our 30-year anniversary, but the pandemic unfortunately got in the way.
Well, you're in Montrose, back where you met each other, so not the same, but
Yeah.
but happy anniversary. You said
Thank
it was
you.
a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Happy belated 30th anniversary. That's a huge milestone. So
Thank you.
congratulations to you two.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and then when I first met you it was at the Business Expo at Verdugo Hills Hospital.
Okay.
I met you kind of in passing. You were welcoming everyone, and we got to talk a little bit, and you mentioned that you went to CSUN, which that's where I went too. So I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And you said you grew up here, and so I just felt like I've got to get to know your story. So you went to CSUN. What did you study there?
So I was a business administration major, and for many of the community folks graduating from CV or some of the other local high schools, I was a commuter to Cal State Northridge. So I would live here in the community, drive out for my classes, and then at some point make the trek home each day. But it was a wonderful experience at Cal State Northridge. I was the first of my family to graduate from college, and so it was a pretty big deal for our family.
Oh, wow. So your parents must be pretty proud of you.
Yeah, I think my mom is trying to watch this live today,
is she?
so hopefully making her proud there.
I'll have to look through the comments a little later. I'm sure she's in here.
Okay.
Well, that's amazing. I was going to ask you, what did your parents do? Did you follow in their footsteps? Were they in the hospital business, or how? I'm just so curious, because when you ask someone who's young, what do you want to do? It usually changes. So was this something you always knew you wanted to do? How did you, someone you knew was in this field? I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would share with you that it wasn't intentional that I landed in healthcare to begin with. I actually started, once I graduated from Northridge, in the banking industry. And then went from there to work at Walt Disney. I worked at Walt Disney when they were building Disneyland Paris, and they were building the Indiana Jones ride. So if we have any Disney fans out there, that's the years that I was working for Disney. And during that time, I had actually started dating who's now my wife, and she was volunteering over at Verdugo Hills Hospital.
Oh,
and
wow.
so when days where I could come over for lunch and visit her, I would walk down the main corridor where there are photos of all the board members and the executives of the hospital. And they're kind of instilled in me, as I looked at that, I was like, I wonder if I could run a hospital someday. And I was in my early 20s at that point in time.
Wow.
And so what's interesting of what goes full circle is not only, yes, did I get into healthcare, mainly because my wife was involved in it early on when we first met, but ultimately coming back to where I grew up and actually leading the hospital that I walked the hallways with to have lunch with my then girlfriend, now wife.
Wow, that is so surreal. It's so interesting to look back and see how things connect like that. Like, who knew?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of imagined it, but I'm sure it was an idea that was so far away, you don't know if it's going to happen or not. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And so let's shift a little bit.
Sure.
I'm curious, what does the CEO do at the hospital?
Yeah.
What does a day in the life look like?
It's an interesting question. It's a busy life, especially during the pandemic. I would share that probably my day is made up of about 6 hours of Zoom calls, conference calls that I'm in, either whether it be locally with folks in the community or coworkers, and then with the health system, because we're part of a larger health system in Keck Medicine of USC. I typically average about 100 emails a day. And then it's very important to me to be embedded in the community and be part of that fabric. And so interacting with other nonprofit boards, being at an event like this, and getting the word out about me growing up in the community or our hospital is very important. So usually most evenings we'll end up with a Zoom or Teams meeting or some type of event or talking with physicians about the future of our hospital. So that's what pretty much makes up the day. Try to get in some exercise in the morning. I get up at about 5:30 in the morning and do a workout because I know the rest of the day is just going to get overloaded with events or meetings.
What's your choice of workout?
So, not that I am not doing a plug for anyone group. I think with the pandemic, I used to have a gym membership where I would go on a regular basis, but have migrated to a Peloton, which allows me to spin and do some other exercise on it as well. And it really helps when you're in the midst of a pandemic. So I'm not promoting that, but it does work for me. So
do you have? I have the bike and I love it. I love that you can. Well, now it's turning into a Peloton ad, but I just love that you can be with your friends on there, see who scored high and who reached their goals and compete with each other. Yeah. But do you do the cycling? Do you have the cycling bike or do you do the treadmill?
Yeah, so I have the cycling bike, and the challenge with me is I've always been a competitive individual, and so even when I think I'm just going to get on the bike, and even though there's a leaderboard there, I think I'm just going to take a nice, easy ride. But with my friends that are also on there as well, one of them will high five me or something, and then we're off to the races. And the next thing I know, I've 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and I've had a good exercise.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I love to hear that. Can you tell us a little bit about how things have changed at the hospital amid this pandemic?
Yeah, it's been a crazy 2020. I always jokingly but seriously say that I'm done with COVID. The unfortunate thing is it's not done with us. And so back in the January, February timeframe when we started to see this pandemic emerging in China, we started running scenarios because hospitals are required to always run emergency preparedness drills. Most of the time we run them on like an earthquake or an active shooter drill, where this time we changed it up and said, what if a COVID patient ended up in our ED or in our community? How would we plan around that? Right. And so we started some activities in January and February. We saw our first patient in March. And so the biggest part of standing up the hospital to be prepared to take care of these patients was setting up a surge plan where at each phase of volumes growing in the community, if it had happened, that we could actually change the hospital's format so we could take an operating room area and make it ICU beds. Or we could take an office that sometime in its history had gases on the wall, oxygen and so forth, that we could turn that into an ICU room. Right. And so we created a 5-phase plan around how we would stand up and evolve as this pandemic would grow. Ultimately, the goal was to flatten the curve and try to educate the community on how to stay safe. Right. But we spent hours with the top minds and doctors in the community, with our top nurses and our staff, meeting together and just planning around that and turning our hospital into something greater that could really withstand and help us through this pandemic.
That's really... it almost feels like this was very different from everything else you had tried out before, right? You had to, when have we had a pandemic before? In the recent years, at least? Yeah,
in the recent years, no, and certainly not in my lifetime. So, being a leader, I think one thing that we've tried to do in our hospital is build a culture that's built on trust. When you've got an organization that has a high level of trust, when you end up going through pandemics or other issues that you're trying to solve, you're able to actually move the speed along of coming together with a plan quicker when there is a high level of trust. And so, that's been a focus. Also, with the pandemic, we all watch TV, right? And we see different things being said and so forth. And so, if there's not enough communication, then staff and the community starts filling in fact with what they hear.
Right.
And so we found it very important to get the word out with our staff and our healthcare workers. So twice a week, I hold a live virtual meeting, no different than really this, where I'll give maybe 5-10 minutes of an update, and then we'll move to about 10 minutes of questions, so that whether a staff member is off for the day and they're at home, or they're
Right.
up on their nursing unit, they can type in questions, and they've got their leader in front of them, standing there with them
Right.
through this pandemic.
Right. And in real time, if questions come up, you said you do this weekly?
Twice a week, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just a reminder to everyone in the audience, I think I forgot to mention it earlier. We will have a short Q&A session after I ask my questions to Keith. So feel free to leave your your questions in the comments, and I will look through them and we will go ahead and ask him. I had originally said maybe we steer away from coronavirus questions, though I know that's such a hot topic right now. Everyone has so many different questions. So Keith is kind enough. He said he would address some of those questions for those of you who have any. So you can leave those in the comments below, and I will go ahead and get to those in just a few minutes. Let me just wrap up my questions here. What advice do you have for students who aspire to one day be in the position you're in?
Good question. So I think I would summarize them into two or three examples. One is, it's a mindset. If you set your mind to anything, then you can achieve it. I was the first to graduate from college in my family, and so it was a mindset. Never leading through a pandemic before, but being a CEO,
Right.
it's a mindset that we're going to get through that. So, set the tone in your mind that whatever you set as a goal, you can achieve it. The other two items that if I knew these earlier on in my career, I probably
Right.
would have not made as many mistakes early on, or maybe I would have grown faster, is one, find a mentor. They don't necessarily have to be in your industry. They can be in the local community, but really finding a mentor. I have 3 even still today.
Wow.
And whenever I need to ask them a question about things that I'm thinking through, whether it's this pandemic or anything else, I know that they have my best interest at heart, and they're going to share with me what they feel is what I need to hear,
Right.
not what I hope I hear. And so finding a mentor that can really help you and step out of the box and grow. The other thing I think is really important for our students or our early careerists is networking. I can't tell you how important, and I wish I knew this earlier on in my career, to connect with others, and because you're usually only 1 degree of separation from knowing somebody that will open up a door, an opportunity for you in the future. And I think if I had done those things earlier, I think I'd probably be even better than I am today, even though I'm always a continual learner and trying to learn each and every day.
Right. I think the networking note is so important as well. But I also feel like so many people maybe don't do it because of, it's a little scary to go out there, put yourself out there. It takes vulnerability and overcoming that and just being confident. And I think there's also a fear of failure. What if I go out there and make a fool of myself, or I don't know the right answer? Even here speaking with you, I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. What if he leaves here thinking I'm, but I think that's so important. And I read something today about how mistakes are actually opportunities. So I love that. Go out there, network, make a mistake, and then have that be an opportunity.
Yeah, I have these conversations probably weekly. I truly believe that unless you're in Brazil, the worst thing that somebody can tell you is no. Someday I'll share the story about what happened there, but typically I believe the worst something somebody can tell you is no, and then you move on and you learn from it.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And what happens if someone says no?
Yeah.
You go home and you life goes on, right?
Right.
And then also the mentor. I think, that I took an art 101 class, so I'm not at all familiar with art and all of that. But the one takeaway I had was that they all had mentors, and that's always stuck with me. And so I guess you said you have 3. Are they colleagues? How does that relationship even happen? Is it just something where you speak to them and then suddenly you realize one day, I guess that person's my mentor now?
Yeah.
Or is it a conversation you have with them?
Well,
you propose the idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. I think sometimes these things just evolve and they happen. I think one of my mentors came in as an interim executive at Children's LA, who was a retired executive from a major academic health system on the west side of town.
Okay.
And we became friends, and he said he was taking his executive coaching classes to become certified. And I said, hey, can I be your guinea pig? Can I be?
Right.
Can I be? And that started, 7 years ago. And he doesn't have any other clients but me. We enjoy getting together and we banter about healthcare.
Right.
And so that was one. I have another one who has never been in healthcare at all, but cares about me as an individual. He's probably one of the hardest individuals I've ever met, but truly, I'll say, loves my wife and I. And so I know that when I chat with him about an issue, and he's my mentor, he is going to test my patience more than you can believe, where, we won't come to blows, but it gets pretty aggressive. And I know if I can pass that, then I know that then I'm doing okay. And so they've kind of evolved from different places. But over time, I think they've all made me a better person and a better leader.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I hope to one day have 3 mentors. I think I have like 1 now. So I hope to be in that position very soon, because I do think it accelerates your growth. Okay, so I think at this point, anyone who has questions and you haven't posed them, go ahead, leave them in the comments. I'm going to start to go through them right now. I did see a lot of comments, not necessarily questions, about how much everyone loves USC Verdugo Hills Hospital. Great leader, a great hospital, people commenting and loving this. But let's see. Doing a fantastic job in the community. Thank you.
Well, maybe as you're looking up some of those, maybe I can talk about the flu. How's that? Can I reference that briefly?
Yeah, please.
So obviously we're in the middle of this pandemic, but what are we doing around making sure we're prepared for the flu? And so this last weekend, we did a flu shot drive-through, and we partnered with a local business, the YMCA of La Cañada.
Yes.
And we brought the flu shots and offered up our parking lot. They brought pumpkins. And so we administered about 300 flu shots over the weekend, and handed out about 300 pumpkins. And so it was a great partnership with the YMCA, and really trying to, again, be embedded in the community. What we are seeing, because I asked our infection prevention person right before I left to come here, what we're seeing, because people during this pandemic are doing what? They're washing their hands more, they're wearing their mask. And so we're seeing the flu that usually starts south of the equator somehow then arrives eventually on the East Coast, and then makes its way typically through the holidays of Thanksgiving to the West Coast, because people are traveling all over the place. And then we typically are ending flu season somewhere in the April timeframe. All right. But what we're seeing south of the equator and East Coast is it's non-existent so far. And so we think part of that could be because of the actual the flu shot may be more right on this year than in years past. But also we really think the washing of the hands and the wearing of the mask and being physically and socially distanced is really impacting that. So we'll kind of continue to monitor it on a daily basis, but we're really not seeing that much of it yet.
Wow. So the masks are helping, because I know there's so much controversy around them. They don't work. They do work. They, it's like, feels like if you Google it, there's a stance on each side, and you don't know what to believe. So it's working, washing the hands and wearing the mask. So I guess on that note, has it helped with, from what you've seen, has it helped with keeping the numbers down with COVID-19?
Definitely, I believe that's the case. I think as we look at the county and the state numbers, we have been able to flatten that curve. Now, what happens when the curve is flattened is it now spreads out over a longer period of time. But I think it definitely has been effective. The city of Glendale's rates over the last month and a half have really been well below the county average and the state average, which has been great. And I think that's a testament to the effort from the community in staying physically distanced, washing our hands, and wearing a mask. And I think it's been very effective.
Great. Okay, so let me see here. We have a question about, well, actually, before we move on to that, you said it was a flu drive-through in the parking lot at Verdugo Hills. Will you have more of those, or?
Yes, it was so popular. We've received a number of emails asking, can we have another one? And so what will really come down to it is if we can get access to some more flu shots that we can offer up to the community, we'll do it. Historically, we offer up the flu shots through a county fair that or a health fair that we do on our campus each year. But since the pandemic doesn't allow us to do that, we moved to the drive-through. What we are finding is although some physician practices are offering flu shots, some have stopped doing them this year. Thus, I think has created a greater demand for it.
Right.
And so we are looking to see if we can get some more flu vaccines, flu shots, and if we can, we'll schedule another one because it was very successful.
Great. And then they can get that information if they just go to the website and look at the event calendar, I assume?
Yeah. Not only on the event calendar within our website, we also push out through social media to the La Crescenta page, the Montrose page, the La Cañada page, the Glendale page, when we've got activities coming up, whether they be a flu shot, clinics, drive-through, or doc talks, or whatever it might be.
Perfect. I love that you're staying current on social media. That's amazing. Okay, so we have a question. Can Keith share a few comments about women and family services? We're hearing lots of people talk about their positive experiences.
With being part of USC and the health system, the university and the health system have put over $35 million in the last 6 years into the hospital to make upgrades. One of those areas is women's and family services. And so we've brought in the latest technology for 3D tomography. We are offering up discounted mammograms, $99 through the end of this month, so that, we create awareness around it and really encourage individuals to have their annual screening. We have upgraded our operating suites to add 2 Da Vinci robots, which basically the way I would describe them is taking something that you might have an incision that historically would be 5 to 6 inches, where now is only a matter of a half an inch. And so this robotic equipment that has about 6 to 8 arms on it that then allows the surgeon to create a very small incision and be able to fix or do whatever it might be needed. And so from a women's health services, we've seen a growth in the surgeries that can be done that way for women. We've got the breast imaging center. We've got breast oncology surgeons that are available. So we've really done a lot to improve the women's part of it. We also include the children's aspect to that. We've upgraded our labor and delivery suites. We've updated our postpartum. And then my favorite is we've added a steak and lobster dinner for mom and mom and dad, or mom and birth partner, so that I like to look at it as going to be your last romantic meal for the next 18 years. And so yes, we've done a lot. So we've done a lot in the women's and family services to really set it apart and create a niche in the community.
That is I love that, the steak and lobster dinner, because my husband and I, since having kids, we haven't had any romantic time. So that's amazing. Very thoughtful. Okay, so let's see. Someone else asks, sounds like he reads a lot. Any books he would recommend?
I think my favorite book is The Speed of Trust. I think we talked about earlier in our session here about building trust in an organization. The book is written by Stephen Covey, and so I highly recommend that. It's all about how to build trust, how to build a team, Because I truly believe when there's a high level of trust, waste goes down, and the ability to execute on plans, especially during a pandemic, really helps when there's a high level of trust. So that's my favorite book.
And I assume you can probably apply that to all aspects of your life, right?
Yeah.
At home with your children, with
Yeah.
everyone, I assume.
Yes.
That's great. So let's see. Thank you for all that you do. A lot of people very excited to just have you on here and hear your story, it sounds like.
Oh, they're too kind.
Yeah.
They're too kind.
Okay. So I think I forgot, I'm thinking here right now, I forgot to ask you, what was Montrose like back when you were going to school here? Was it like it is now? Did it look the same? The storefronts? I mean, was it the same idea? What about events? I think there used to be an event called the Verdugo. Oh, what was it called? It was like a Verdugo fair, from my understanding. Did you go to that?
I think I went to that once, but I think, and this might date me a little bit, but my memories early on of Montrose were things like the Montrose Theater. It's now a parking lot, I think across from the Black Cow. And that used to be a movie theater, and it burned down, I think, in the late 80s. So I remember going to movies there. I remember going to a local a liquor store as a kid. Now that sounds bad when I say it that way, but it was always to go in and buy my bubble gum and then buy Topps baseball cards. And so that was located. It's not there anymore. It was located near where the Trader Joe's is in the building right next door. The Rocky Cola Cafe, was always a big thing for me as an older teen, going there and enjoying. It's now being remodeled right now, and I forgot what it's going to be when it's done. And then for me, I've always been, although my taste buds have evolved beyond Mexican food, in Montrose with Joselitos, it's been there forever. El Charro, that's been there forever. And then for me, it's just outside of the Montrose Shopping Park, El Sol, still on Honolulu. Those were always go-to spots growing up. And then lastly, in sentimental Grayson's Toontown, I went there as a second grader with my parents and bought a guitar. I still have that, and then I learned how to play. Not very good at it at all, at all.
But you tried.
I tried, yeah. As much as my parents wanted me, I tried. But the sentimental part is my youngest son asked if he could have it, so I still have it today, and he has it in his room. And so that's the other thing I remember growing up.
Oh, that's awesome. Shout out to Grayson's. I love that, passing down the heirlooms. I always think of that. Now that I have kids, I'm like, well, should I save this for my daughter? She'll probably like it one day. That's great. Okay, so then we also have, how are you such a successful leader? What would you say are your best and worst qualities as a leader?
I think probably one of the better traits is I try to be a very present leader and a good listener. And so I think if you were to interview staff on me, the majority of them would say they see me often. They see me rounding on the floor. They see me asking them how they're doing. What can we do better to help you? How do we protect you more with PPE? And so I think being a very present leader and being a good listener have really helped me. It's a soft skill, but has really helped me to be the leader that I am. I think for better or worse, I think when I face tragedies like a pandemic or big crises, I tend to be at my calmest, which is strange.
That's great.
But then the flip side, where I think this is the weakness, is the littlest things sometimes, like squeezing the middle of the toothpaste, the tube, right? It's those little things that when those things get out of whack, I have to take a step back and go, okay, that's not a big deal, and talk to myself about it. So I think if there was the one greatest challenge that I continue to work on myself with are the little things.
Oh, that's so funny.
So.
Because you would just think, I have all the big things in order. Really, the small thing is what's going to break it all down. Come on, it's hard not to get frustrated. I get that.
Yeah.
Someone said it was called Days of Verdugo, the fair. Do you
Yes.
remember that?
Now, yes, I do remember the days.
Okay.
And I was in that. I was on a fire truck a couple of years in a row, a really old one, and rode on the back of it. And
Was it like a parade?
Yeah, and waved at everybody.
How
So I do
funny.
remember doing that a couple times as a kid.
So were you part of like Boy Scouts, or I'm wondering how you got on a fire truck in the parade?
So, for me, my activities growing up very much involved in sports, which explains why I'm overly competitive. But doing the local CSA baseball through the years got me involved. I did the travel ball for a period of time. And then ultimately from ninth grade on, I really got more involved in my local youth group through local ministry and so forth, and really came out of my shyness, I think, that I used to have as a younger adult, and really build friends, and then realized that I wanted to give back to the community. And then after graduating high school, and although going to Cal State Northridge, I would get involved in different volunteer groups with junior hires and high school students in the community, which then early on, which I didn't really realize it was helping me become a leader, is
Right.
I was then thrust in front of sometimes up to 300 students at a time as a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old with volunteer adult parents that were looking to me to be a leader.
Right.
And so I didn't realize that those different things of giving back and helping the community as a younger individual would really help me evolve in my future. But I look back at those things and try to connect the dots, and I think that really, really made a difference for me.
That's so interesting to hear you say you were shy, because that's not at all what I see now. Especially in your position, you can't be shy. So I'm thinking of my brother who's kind of shy. How did you? Was it just being thrust into these positions that helped you with that? Okay.
I think that weighed into it. I think when you're going through the growing up, the adolescence and growing up and becoming more confident in who you are,
Right.
I think I was confused with the fact that I thought I was introverted. And you can tell through this dialogue, I am not introverted.
Right.
And really what I realized I was just shy. And then when I
Right.
hit kind of the 9th year, 10th grade, 11th grade, I realized that I had a contribution that I could make to really help others, my fellow students, my local community, and how I was wired and how my DNA. So yes, I was a little confused between shyness and being introverted versus extroverted back in the day.
Right. I recently just figured that out too. I used to go tell everyone, "Oh, I'm an introvert. I like to stay home. I'm an introvert." But actually, I feel very comfortable speaking and being in the spotlight. Though I do think I like to stay home a lot of the time too. It's almost like I need to re-energize. Like I need, you know what I mean? So that's funny to hear you say that. Imposter syndrome, have you ever felt it? Do you have any tips for overcoming it? I assume that maybe, I don't know, I saw something on Oprah where she spoke about how so many people suffer from imposter syndrome. You're in this position where you're like, is this really how it's supposed to feel? Do I belong in this position? Did they pick the right person? Do you ever have moments where you're like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here, or I think maybe it goes hand in hand with the fear of failure, right?
Yeah.
It's not that you're not supposed to be there, but you're put in a position, even this pandemic, I'm sure you weren't prepared for that.
Yeah, I think connecting the dots from a few of the questions we've talked about earlier is really it's a mindset.
Right.
I take every failure and try to always turn it into what have I learned from it and how will it make me a better person than worrying about the failure of that given moment. I am a mentor for a few of the students from USC, the Price School, their master's in health administration. And one of them asked me that question just the other day, is the fear of failure and then feeling down about that.
Right.
And so we talk through that about how do you take what you learned from that and turn that into a positive. But that just doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's something that you have to continue to work at
Right.
to make it just part of your DNA. I use a lot of this term, the tools in the toolbox. And so this would be a tool in the toolbox of just because you get a no or the fear of failure, you need to find a way to take that, learn from it, and then make that energize you to be better in the future.
Right. I love that you call it a mindset, because once your mind is set, you have to, in these moments where you may experience fear, you have to remember this is where my mindset is. So that's great. Another question: with so much on your plate, especially during this time, what do you do to decompress? Any recommendations? Someone's second.
Yeah.
Someone else is interested in that too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Popular question.
So I obviously I shared earlier about trying to get up and work out early in the morning. That's when it's the quietest. I don't have emails or phone calls coming in.
Right.
But in the evenings if I have a quiet moment or on a weekend, I like working on. I have a couple old cars. And I love going out and tinkering with them and working on the engine or working on the body of it a little bit, and doing some little restorations here or there on it. Even sometimes gardening, as strange as that sounds.
That's great.
It just gets me away from the hustle and bustle, because when you think of healthcare and you think of our hospital in the community, it's a 24/7, 365-day a year job. And even when I'm on vacation, I'm not on vacation. Even sitting here, I've received a couple text messages. We'll see what those are when we're done. But really, those are the things that I look where it gives me calm. Just like you being home, I think that although I'm out and about probably most nights of the week or doing something, well, now during the pandemic, virtually, the weekend is my private time to just try to re-energize my jets. And get prepared for the next week. Right.
Gardening. Do you have you been doing any of that lately?
Yeah, some. Planting some plants. My son-in-law has taught me how to grow some bushes, rose bushes, and plants, bougainvilleas out of stems, and so I'm trying that out to see what happens with that. Little small things, but again, those things just get my mind off of. Just the hustle and bustle of healthcare being a 24/7, 365-day a year thing.
Right. Do you have a green thumb so far? Does it look like you do?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's brown. It kills them. But the fear of failure, right? Now, we'll learn from it, and hopefully the next one will stay alive.
You have
as far as the plants.
You have a green thumb mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's see. Can you talk about a time where you failed or something didn't go as planned and what you learned from it?
Let's see. What would that be? I mean, there's obviously been many failures in life that we learn from. I think back in my prior days at Children's LA, I at one point I was learning a lot about the finances of the hospital, and putting in what they call a cost accounting system that can give you profitability by service lines and so forth, and really not fully understanding how the system worked, and creating new fields of how I thought we could roll things up, and so learning from those moments. I think also learning moments on building the right team, and sometimes the structure of the team and the feel of the team doesn't quite fit with each other and doesn't quite gel, and then therefore has a lack of trust. I think probably earlier on in my career, not acting on those senses and picking up on those things earlier on. So then the dynamics of the group could potentially go a little longer, where there was a lack of trust and a lack of cohesiveness. And what I've learned later on in my career is that when I see those things, sure, you want to try to fix it and coach and mentor those individuals to help bring them along and come alongside them. But being willing to pull the trigger if it's not going to work. It's not meant to be a negative thing, but when you think about the downstream of maybe impacting 10, 20 other people by not making the call on that, even though you've tried hard to do it, versus kind of ignoring it, I think I've learned from those things. And I think the team that we have at USC Verdugo Hills Hospital that we've built over the last 5 years really have that mindset, one, about a culture of trust, two about getting things done and learning from the history of this hospital when it couldn't keep up with the Joneses for the lack of capital resources to put in the latest and greatest. But now we have for the last 5 years, and the 35 plus million that the university and Keck Medicine has put into it. But I think we have a mindset as a leadership team. But I learned early on by not making those changes, I really think has helped us here at USC Verdugo Hills Hospital.
That's great. What did you learn at the Children's Hospital? Maybe what was your takeaway? Is there one thing in particular?
I think, gosh, when you think about that's the place where the sickest of sick go.
Yeah.
And walking the hallways each and every day, knowing that the physicians there and the nurses and the rest of the clinical staff are doing the absolute best thing they could for the best outcome for those patients. And that even though I was a finance and then operations guy at that hospital, was just watching the miracles day in and day out that they would do. And so I think just continually being humbled by the purpose of that hospital and what it means to Southern California. We do transfer some of our children that need the higher level of care to CHLA, and it's wonderful to still have that connection today with to have with them.
Man, I just think of, how do you go home and not think of everything that would happen in your day-to-day there? That must have been very hard.
Yeah, it's hard to even today with where we're at, and it, obviously not only pediatrics that we serve at USC Verdugo Hills Hospital, but adults, is being able to shut down enough to go home and have a nice dinner and connect with your family. And so forth. It can be a challenge sometimes, but it's a continual effort, a positive one. It's a meaningful one. Right. But it can be a challenge. I usually will use my commute time home, which is about 30 minutes, to just kind of decompress, so that when I get home, I'm kind of refreshed and can change the mindset, and focus on the family.
That's great. Do you have any career or life goals for the near future? Oh, that's a good one.
I think, for me, serving as the CEO at USC Verdugo Hills Hospital is setting a course for this hospital, for this community, and with the health system, so that it is going to have many, many years of long-term sustainable success. And so, those are things we talked about women's services and all the things we're doing around that. We've got some future growth plans that I'm trying to stay 5 and 10 years out in front of where we're sitting here right now, and to continue to put this place on the map so the community will continue to drive to us and not away from us. They don't need to drive to another community to receive care. You have it here in the local community. And so it's not about just right now with what we've done over the last 6 years. It's the next 5 years, the next 10 years of what we need to do to continue to make this place a place where you can just drive up the hill or down the hill, living on the mountainside here, to make a difference and be embedded in this community. Right.
Well, I hope everyone watches this video, because I feel watching this and getting to know you, it's why wouldn't you want to go there? But a question came up that I wanted to ask myself. I'll remember later and ask you. But we're nearing the end of our time a little bit here. Before I go into my fun speed round of questions, do you have any parting words, any events coming up, anything you'd like to share? Maybe how should we, you kind of touched on how to stay, take care of yourself during flu season, but anything you can touch on before we end our time here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple comments, tips. So one is our hospital, through our local website, and then what we push out on social media, we continue to have classes offered free to the community. They could be Lamaze classes. They could be suicide prevention, which we've done recently. We have men's health seminars, women's health seminars, doc talks. And so you can stay connected with us from your living room. and participate with a group of physicians. Many times they're faculty from USC that happen to either live in the community or provide services at our hospital. And so if any of those resonate with you, even around women's health services, we've got a number of classes that are online. Wow. that folks can stay connected with. So I think that's one really important thing to remember. The last thing that I want to share is, and especially right now during this pandemic, your health care and your health should not be put on hold. We've had a few incidences during this pandemic in the last 7 months where we've had some patients show up with a mini stroke that they had 2 days prior, 3 days prior, and they didn't know what it was, and and they just stayed home. And then the symptoms didn't get any better, and then they came into the ED. And then once we diagnosed them that they had had a mini stroke, the recovery time or even potentially a full recovery becomes not possible when people put their health care on hold. When you think about all of the safety precautions hospitals have to put in place, we have a temperature checking, we have a screening checking, all of our staff are wearing masks, we have protocols for when they don other PPE. We are safer to be in our hospital than going to maybe a local grocery store, which I think they're all wonderful, or even restaurants outdoor. They don't have all the same precautions that a hospital wouldn't put in place. And so the point in bringing home of don't let your health go on hold is critical, because some of the stories in patients we've seen come through, I know their outcome would have been better had they come in right away.
I'm so happy that you brought up the example about the grocery store. I didn't even think of it that way. I'll go there, but then there is some fear about a hospital being more somehow contagious, or and that's just not true.
Right.
I mean, if anything, we're taking more precautions. You're taking more precautions. So just a few last questions that came in. Where can I find information about your events? Would it be?
Yeah, so it's a couple places. It would either be if you want to go to uscvhh.org, and you can scroll through our community section for different events there, and also we're going to take those doc talks, men's health, women's health, and shoot them out in social media. So I'm linked in through Facebook with the La Crescenta page and the La Cañada page and the Montrose page and the Glendale page, all the pages, right? And so we try to be judicious that we're not sending out, every time, but we do try to push out some of those most important things so that we can keep the community connected with how to take precautionary measures to stay healthy.
Right. Awesome. And a lot of thank yous. I can't go through all of them, but thank you, Keith, for your leadership. Thank you, Keith, for all your support in our community and great leadership at our local hospital. Everyone's very thankful for your services, as are we. Thank you for taking the time today to come and share your story. And I think it certainly helps with feeling connected with our community, knowing that, you've come up from the little hill down here to share it with us. And so many of us can relate to it. A lot of us grew up here. And so I love your story. Just your parents didn't graduate. You're the first to graduate from college. I mean, it's amazing. Well, that's so inspirational. Did you always have good grades?
I did.
Okay.
I wasn't straight A, but definitely my grades were pretty strong.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah. It was a work and effort. It was an effort though.
Right. I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's end with this little speed round of questions. What is the last song you listened to, if you can remember?
So it's a short drive from the hospital down here.
Yeah.
I'm an '80s guy. I love listening to '80s music. So let's see if anybody remembers this one. But it's a song by Wang Chung, and the song is called "Everybody Have Fun Tonight." Oh,
would it? I can't recall.
I don't know that.
Would it be in a movie or?
I'm sure it was in one of those '80s movies along the way, but you can use Spotify or where and look it up. But I'm very much into 80s music to remind me of growing up, and it's a little bit of a pick-me-up. So that was happens to be the last song I listened to.
The 80s were a good time. A lot of good movies came out during that time, too. Awesome. I love it. I'm going to have to check that song out. What's the last book you read?
The last book would come back to The Speed of Trust.
Okay.
Every once in a while, I'll pull it back out and remind myself of some different attributes or tools in the toolbox to continue to build trust. So that would be the last one that I read.
Someone has heard of it. They just listened to it on K Earth 101, by the way, the song. So
They had to say K Earth 101, right? That's awesome. I love it. I love it.
Someone else love that song, they said. What's been your quarantine hobby?
The quarantine hobby is back to the green thumb that sometimes kills the plant, but always best intentions, right?
Right.
And then working on the classic cars. I've got a couple 65, 66 Mustangs. One has been in the family and through my wife's side since it was bought off the showroom floor. And so tinkering with those, going out for a ride around the community.
Was that the one at the motorcade?
That was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one
so
of them.
Cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Do you have a favorite holiday?
So it's Christmas, and it's for a few reasons. Christmas, one, because of the reason for the season, but more than, or in addition to that, is I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Christmas Vacation, the Griswold family that puts up 10,000 lights on their house.
Right.
So my family and I, including this year, we're already planning around it right now as I sit here. We typically will put up around 20,000 lights on our house and in our yard, and then it dances to Christmas music. And so lights will fade in and out and blink and flash, and we even create our own radio station. That when people are within 3 houses, they can watch that. So it's something the family we've done as a tradition for, the last 15, 16 years, and it's just something we look forward to each and every year. So it's a little Griswoldy, but we do enjoy it a lot.
So do you put the 20,000 lights up? You and your family all put?
Yeah.
No way.
So we do that, and then when my children have either a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a spouse, we volunteer or volunteer them that they are going to be part of putting up the lights as well.
They have to be part of spreading the holiday cheer.
Yeah, it's part of their what do you call it? Their baptism into the Hobbs family.
Oh, I love that. Oh, wow. I bet that was fun for your kids growing up too.
Yeah, it's fun, and then their friends at school would talk about it a lot. But anyway, mainly it's the reason for the season, Christmas. But beyond that, we enjoy putting up Christmas lights.
Love that. What is a quote you live by?
I think I use it quite a bit. But if it were easy, anybody would do it. It's a paraphrase from A League of Their Own, back when they had the women's Major League Baseball team, back during, I think it was World War II. And so I've paraphrased that. But when you think about that, it comes back to the mindset, right? And that is if you fail, guess what? If it were easy, everyone would do it. Each of my kids could quote that, as far as if they were in here in this chair and you asked them, they know I use that with them quite a bit.
We didn't touch on that at all, and it's not part of my speed round, but you said you have 3 kids, right? And are they, how old are they?
So the oldest is 25 and married, lives in the Santa Clarita, Valencia area. And then my 2 boys, one is finishing his master's program, the other one is starting his undergraduate. And so they're at home using Zoom for all of their classes because they can't be on campus. So it's been great from one standpoint, as they're home, and then it hasn't been so great because they're home. All kidding aside, it's been wonderful to have them back at home.
I'm sure
doing their classes.
Every parent's dream.
Yeah, right? I can only imagine the younger ones trying to do that and trying to get a kindergartner, first grade, second grade, trying to make that work. I know that can be a challenge, and I wish them well. I know it's got to be a challenge.
Are any of your kids following in your footsteps, or are they going on their own path?
I think all of them currently are going on their own path. We'll see if any
Okay.
of them end back in up in healthcare like my wife and me, but
Right.
but we'll see. Right now, no.
Right. You never know.
Yeah.
We'll see. And lastly, finish this sentence, please. When I think of Montrose, blank comes to mind.
I hate to say this, but food.
I love
just
that.
food. When I come through here, I'm at a local restaurant eating, and if I can call a few of them out, because I think they're fabulous.
Let's do it.
Bluefish, Town, Black Cow. Obviously, I shared El Sol, Joselitos. Those are typically my go-to, although I've tried some of the other ones, but I always
Right.
think of food.
Right.
And obviously there is shopping. I'm not a big shopper. If my wife came through with me, then we're going to do some shopping and
Right.
we're going to do some food. But I love the food in the Montrose Shopping Park, as far as all the different restaurants that we have here.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was, I did not expect that, but that makes me so happy because they've experienced, some of the restaurants have really struggled during this time. So that's great. I love that you think of food when you think of Montrose.
Yeah, and if I can actually close this on food,
Yeah.
During the pandemic, the community businesses reached out to us over and over again of how we can help. And so owners would partner with the local restaurants here. And I do need to get a shout out also to New Moon, although that's just outside the Montrose Shopping Park. And business owners would buy meals for sometimes the entire hospital or our emergency department or 2 or 3 floors. And I want to say for 3 months, we had food every day.
Wow.
For our staff and our healthcare workers. And so a shout out to not only the business owners, but the local restaurants that really came to bat and helped fed our stomachs.
Right.
We have COVID-19. I also want to say there was the COVID-15 for the 15 pounds that I gained during the pandemic, just because the food was just so amazing.
Right.
So,
Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. And I certainly think it's inspirational, and you've inspired me, if that means anything. And thank you for your support. I know that you are on the board on several organizations around here. So thank you for supporting our community. It means so much to us. We've all been struggling, and so it's nice to have someone like you come and share what you know. So thank you. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for posing your questions for Keith. And we hope to see you at one of our future webinars. We'll have more information on our social media. And of course, if you have any questions for Keith, you can visit their website or their social media, shoot them a message, and I'm sure they'll get you in touch with the correct person. And lastly, thank you to our producers again, Stamina Wellness. They have a supplement perfect for boosting your immune system with all natural ingredients. And you can get more information on their website as well, staminawellness.com. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely Halloween. Please be safe. And for those who aren't aware, there is a drive-by that the CV Weekly is doing for homes that have decorated their homes, and they are on a map. So check our website for more information or shoot us a message and I will get that over to you. Thank you so much. Have a good one.